Hey everyone, today on OCD Space, we are diving into a subtype that I've been getting loads of requests to discuss, and I've finally found the time to address. The subtype is Real Event OCD, and I'll be sharing some thoughts on the subject that I don't think you'll find anywhere else, so definitely stick around for this one. Now, if you've been enjoying my videos, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing my videos on social media. And thanks to everyone who is already so supportive of this channel. You all motivate me to keep me making these videos, so thank you. Now, with all that said, let's get started with today's video. Hey guys, welcome back to OCD Space. I'm Mike Parker, and this is your place for all things OCD. So, what is this real event OCD thing of which I speak? Well, it's basically when a specific event that happened in your life becomes the focal point of your OCD. It could be a medical or a dental procedure that didn't go completely right, or an event that you perceive as a moral transgression, such as maybe how you treated a certain person in childhood. It could be an incident where you feel you weren't completely honest, like how you chose to use a small business loan. It could even be something you did that you fear was sacrilegious in some way. This event takes over your thinking and fills you up with terrible feelings like anxiety and fear and guilt and shame. And you start to do all you can to try and resolve those feelings, which is often just a lot of ruminating. But more often than not, you may actually find yourself just feeling defeated and hopeless. You end up resigning yourself to the awful story that this event seems to be telling about you. Sounds pretty bad, doesn't it? And yes, it is. And I'm pretty sure this is why I've received so many requests to do a video on this topic. So let's talk about it. Now, I'm going to start out with a hot take. I don't actually consider real event OCD to be an OCD subtype in and of itself. And the reason is because I think the label we put on your OCD should give us some indication of your core doubt. With moral and scrupulosity OCD, we'll see that someone is doubting something like their goodness or their honesty. With negligence OCD, we'll find someone who is doubting their competency. With contamination OCD, we'll find someone who's having doubts about their cleanliness or the safety of their environment. And if you're struggling with real event OCD, well, then you are doubting, yeah, that's the problem. We can't really say. And that's because this real event isn't the thing you are doubting. This real event really happened. Your actual OCD theme is something else. And this real event sort of becomes the evidence in your mind supporting this other doubt. It seems to be the proof that your doubt is true. It's part of your reasoning. And the use of a real event as evidence can occur with any OCD theme. And so if you are struggling with a real event, your first task is to identify the actual theme of your OCD. Luckily for you, to help you with this process, I'm going to do a quick rundown of some of the major OCD themes and some of the doubts we see with these themes. While not exhaustive, this can help get you thinking in the right direction. So starting us off, contamination OCD. This subtype is based on doubts like, what if I'm dirty? Or what if I'm exposing myself to invisible dangers in some way? Negligence OCD. What if I'm going to make a terrible mistake or miss something because I'm incompetent or lacking in some way? Sexual orientation OCD. What if I'm a different sexual orientation than I thought myself to be? Relationship OCD. What if I don't have genuine feelings towards my partner? What if this person is not the right match for me? Moral scrupulosity OCD. What if I'm not devoted enough to my spiritual path? What if I have bad intentions? What if I'm a bad person? POCD. What if I have hidden desires towards people who are too young? Harm OCD. What if I lose control and hurt others or myself? Meta OCD. What if I go crazy? What if I never stop worrying? What if I'm an incurable case? Health OCD. What if my body is not functioning properly? And existential OCD. What if reality is just a simulation or an illusion? In reviewing the OCD themes out there, you should be able to connect that real event you're focused on to the actual OCD subtype that's at play. A real event related to not being completely honest could be connected to a moral scrupulosity theme. An event that involved treating someone poorly in childhood could be related to a harm OCD theme, or a moral scrupulosity theme, or even a POCD theme. And an event like losing a job could be related to a negligence theme. So give that some thought. It's going to help us make some sense of your real event, I promise, in just a minute. Now, one additional thing I want to cover before we get to discussing your real event is your feared possible self. This is basically the main doubt that you have about yourself. It's a story about the sort of person you might be or could become, and it's a fear you've been carrying around with you as long as you've had OCD. Some typical feared possible selves are, I could be someone who is or will become uncaring, dirty, unhappy, trapped, careless, deceitful, inattentive, or immoral. This is another important aspect of understanding your OCD. And it makes sense, after all, that if you think this potential is inside of you, you'll be doing whatever you can to stop this vulnerability from wreaking havoc on your life. So take some time to identify your feared possible self. It could literally be any descriptor or adjective that captures the flaw you perceive in yourself. A quick tip I'll give is to ask yourself the following question: what sort of person are you if your doubt is true? That should get you started. And this reminds me that it's probably time to make a video on the feared possible self, but that's for another day. So anyway, now that you've got your primary OCD theme figured out, and you have a handle on your feared possible self, we can finally talk about the role that this real event is playing in your OCD. So when you have OCD, you have this doubt, and you have this feared possible self. And let's think for a minute about the impact this is going to have on you. You are essentially living your life with this what if just sort of hanging over your head. A possibility is always looming. If we were to think about your life as a book or a movie, it's like you're perpetually in the middle of a thriller plot where the action is still rising and you just know that something bad is going to happen. There's this feeling of dread in the music and the cinematography and the dialogue, and it feels like the bad thing could happen at any moment. When you have OCD, this bad thing that you're waiting for is your doubt. You're going to finally lose your mind or miss something big like an obvious health symptom, or fail to stop the thing that ends up hurting your loved ones. And here's the other part of this OCD thriller plot. When this bad thing finally does happen, it'll be irreversible. That feared self of yours will finally make itself known, and the thing that you've been dreading will finally happen, leaving your life and the lives of those around you irreversibly changed, scarred, and ruined. This is all starting to sound a bit dramatic, isn't it? But I'm not exaggerating. This is the story in your head when you have OCD. And so now we finally get to the significance of the so-called real event in your life. Because when you're living with this doubt, you don't just sit there. You're constantly investigating, perpetually looking for any sign that this bad thing is here. And then, all of a sudden, this event occurs. It could be something that happened last week, Or it could be something that you just remembered that happened long ago and you'd forgotten all about it. This event gets into your head and it actually finishes that OCD story. It becomes the bad thing you've been waiting for, the dreaded turning point in your life. This is the feared possible self finally being revealed. This is your doubt being proven true. For you English and film majors out there, it's the climax of the plot. All of that dread was leading up to this moment. And once you add this real event to your story, this changes your experience with OCD. Your doubt that once felt like a maybe or a what if now feels like a conclusion. You did your best and it wasn't enough. There's nothing left to do. And as I mentioned earlier, the fear has always been that once something bad happens, it'll be irreversible. And so this real event seems like confirmation that things have changed forever. And so there you have it. That is my take on what is happening with real event OCD. It's not a doubt, it's not a subtype, but it does become your focus. And that's because it seems to end your story. But now that we understand how this event came to feel so significant, let's switch gears and look at all of the reasons why this is all wrong, bad, false OCD logic. Are you someone interested in inference-based cognitive behavioral therapy for OCD? Well, I have 2 trainings available online, one for clinicians and a self-help course for people with OCD. If you're interested, check them out on my website, I-CBT trainingonline.com. First and foremost, we have to recognize that this entire OCD story about you was wrong from the get-go, even before you added the real event to it. It's always been an OCD manufactured illusion. For starters, this feared possible self you've been living with was never a reality. The idea that you might be an immoral or an incapable or a rejectable person was just a possibility that once popped into your mind, and OCD made it feel important just because it was possible. And it was this idea that was never anything more than an unsupported possibility that caused you to feel like there was a what if hanging over you and created that feeling of doom in your life. But this was always an OCD manufactured drama. Your life was never a thriller, at least not with your OCD theme. If you're actually a spy, that's pretty cool. But on to my next point. OCD is also exaggerating the significance of this real event in your life. OCD wants you to believe that this real event completely captures who you are as a person. And that's simply not the case. It's a single event. It's one of a million things that you've been through, and no single event defines anyone. Next point. I'm going to keep rolling through these. OCD wants to also give you an incredibly simplistic explanation for why this real event occurred. If I could sum it up, it's like, you bad. In my opinion, it helps to think of OCD as a Neanderthal once in a while. But when you're able to see clearly with OCD pushed aside, you'll notice all the reasons why this event occurred. So don't forget to notice all of the multiple priorities you were probably weighing at the time, the reasons why you made the decision you did, all the things that contributed to the mistake. So push against that OCD Neanderthal in your life once in a while. My next point. The idea that this event is irreversible and has ruined everything is another OCD reasoning error. There is simply no such thing. This event is just an event. Unfortunate? Sure. Could things have gone better? Sure. But ultimately, this event is something you can use to learn and grow. It's one point in your life. And I've got one more point to make about this real event situation. You undoubtedly have feelings that this story has been creating. But here's the thing about stories in your head. They can make us feel things just as much as things happening in reality. The OCD experience isn't so different from what happens to you when you go to a movie. A movie makes you feel things. You can cry at a movie. You can feel terrified at a movie. And meanwhile, it's all fake. It's just images on a screen. And that story you've had in your head, well, that's been its own virtual reality experience too. Don't underestimate the power of a story in your imagination. And allow yourself to dismiss those emotions. You are allowed to identify these emotions as products of your imagination. They are a false alarm and an exaggeration. All right, now with all of the falsities of the OCD story out of the way, it's time to turn your attention back to reality. Reality is the real you in the present moment. This is what OCD loves to take away from you, your own self-knowledge. It's always there, but OCD says don't trust it. Don't pay attention to all the things you really know about yourself. Think about who you could be. Think about the person that this event says you are. And so let's ignore OCD and reconnect with reality. With I-CBT, we work on reconnecting with the things you can see about yourself before you get absorbed in doubt. We look at what you actually like and don't like, what you actually think about things, what your values are and what your morals are and what your motivations are in life. This is always the opposite of the feared self. Your real self, who you really are, is the reason why the feared self is so scary to you. One thing you've been missing with this whole real event situation is what you think about the event, what your emotional response has been to it. This is information about who you really are, because it's in our mistakes that we really learn about ourselves. Sometimes we try things out or do things without thinking, and then we realize we didn't like what happened or how it made us feel. This is all information to gather about yourself. It's evidence of how good you are and how much you care. So let that be my parting advice for this video. Realize this story has always been false, and the idea that this event is some end to the false story is also false. This event is just one step on the path of your life. It's a springboard for self-knowledge. Let your thoughts and feelings about this event, who you are right now, be where you find yourself. Now, a video like this can only go so far, so if you're interested in this approach and struggling with real event, be sure to look into options for I-CBT therapy, which you'll find in the description for this video. And with all that said, I hope that this video has been helpful to all of you out there. Until next time, take care and trust yourselves.